We learned this song, Irene, from a friend of ours. His name was Hughie Ledbetter. He called himself Leadbelly, king of the 12-string guitar. So we knew him best as a rememberer of folk songs, and he taught us dozens of them. Are communists or communist sympathizers in the State Department and other branches of the government before the Senate...
And when Pete Seeger was put out of business by Senator McCarthy's communist witch hunt, he became the de facto leader of the folk revival.
I'm almost glad the blacklisters put us out of business. I don't drink and I don't smoke and I don't like being in nightclubs, but with the Weavers, we went from one rich nightclub to another. Not much fun.
And back in Britain, McCall and Lloyd's Ballad and Blues Club got a welcome addition. In 1956, Pete Seeger's younger sister Peggy moved to London, bringing with her a full repertoire of American folk songs.
My papa told me a plenty kind people. My mama told me more. Said, honey, if you don't quit your rambling way, find trouble at your door. Oh, if I had listened to my mama good before, I would not have been here today. But
I fell in love with her that very first day. She was a typical kind of American girl student, you know, with plimsolls that hardly had any soles on them and a neck that hadn't been washed for several weeks. Only the middle class could afford that kind of thing.
Peggy Seeger and Ewan McCall became a couple and formed a formidable partnership at the helm of the Ballad and Blues Club. The left was now poised to challenge for control of the folk movement in Britain.
In my view, the folk revival is misnamed. We were political, just as Sharp and Vaughan Williams were political. We were political. We were part of that uprising of working class youth coming out of the grammar schools, having learnt something about the way culture worked, but with their own agenda. What we did was we stole the songs and turned them to our own purposes. This was not a revival, this was a revolution.
While McCall and Lloyd were developing a new voice for the revolution, the establishment in the form of the BBC and the collectors at Cecil Sharp House continued to roam the country, rooting out traditional songs.
When they went out to record, these attitudes they had of going in to these places, and so these people would come in with their tape recorders and everything, dressed in a particular way, you know, and as soon as they walk in, they're sniffing.
Now, a lot of the people who really had kept the music alive were travelling people, and there was a famous occasion when a young 17-year-old traveller had got a song we wanted very, very much. And so to get him to sing, he refused to sing it. He was very shy because it had some verses in it which were a bit tricky for the women folk there. And so we roasted him over the campfire, you see. And we've always been rather criticised as a way of collecting folk music, but to roast somebody until they sang.
Those collectors in the 50s who were active, Hamish Henderson, Peter Kennedy, all subscribed to the idea that the tradition was held and kept in safe keeping by the travelling community, the gypsies and the travellers in Scotland and the travellers in Ireland. That the travellers have some magic and they actually have some way of keeping the stuff alive.
A particular favourite of the collectors was Margaret Barry, a travelling singer from County Cork.
There was a marvellous song, an Irish ballad, a tinker song, called As She Moves Through the Fair. And Alan said there's only one woman to sing this, woman called Margaret Barry. And she was a staggering figure, and she played a banjo. We just put her in front of the lights in the studio and said, this is where you'll sit. And she said, fine, and just disappeared, see. Of course, she went to have a little quick one to get a bit of courage for the whole deal. But she left her banjo on the seat under the lights. So the time comes up for transmission live. In comes Alan with Margaret Barry. Hello, stuff. Margaret sits down, and I discover to my dismay that while she's been in the dressing room, she's taken out her teeth, so she has no teeth and this black hair. And she picks up the banjo and goes clunk like that. And there is not a string in tune because the lights have done anything. But Margaret didn't care about that, see. So there she was, this toothless figure, singing as she moves through the fair, and all this. It wasn't popular. I mean, people were ringing up the control room saying, get her off, we've had enough of this.
She stayed away from me, and
this was part of my musical education. Now, I'd never heard this song before. I just thought it was wonderful. So I bought her a pint and said, where did you get that song from? She said, oh, it was on a gramophone record, sung by Count John McCormack.
My young love said to me, my mother won't mind, and me father won't slight you for...
And it wasn't a folk song in the normally accepted term. It's just a wonderful song, but of course, the way she sang it and the environment within which she sang it emphasises the point.
As I was walking down the road, I spied a court and made a board.
Margaret Barry was incredibly shy, but when she got professionalised by a show business agent, he created a persona of being a drunkard and a braggart on stage. She used to take Guinness on stage. That wasn't Margaret at all. She actually had a very shy, underplayed sort of personality.
I met Maggie in London, and we did a tune together in the street. The only time we ever played a tune together, bed next door. And Maggie was a lady, but Maggie could be very the opposite way then, all of a sudden, but she's a grand person. I hope she's in heaven.
She says, no, Sean, you'll have to stay until I with the...
Margaret Barry and the Travelling People were also courted by Ewan MacColl, who was steadily building an army of followers to man the musical barricades.
Most of us with this folk song connection tended to be on the left. And Ewan MacColl was really the spiritual father of that revival. An immense genius, but most annoying, infuriating man at times. But he was definitely our leader. And he brought really cleared off the old rustic maypole dancing concept of English folk song and took it right back to the mines and the docks.
One morning when I went to work, the sight was most exciting. I heard a noise and looked around and heard you think was fighting. I stood amazed and at him gazed to see him in such rages. But I never saw a row like that between the Brockwell cages.
The Right Honourable Sir Anthony Eden, KG, MC, MP.
Good evening. The Suez Canal is a name familiar to everyone.
Egyptian youth destroyed the last vestige of Anglo-French imperialism in Egypt, which tried to impose death and slavery on the...
He had delayed subjects In fact, one grenade did land in an open LVT and was drop-kicked out by an officer.
No apology, and will never make one, for the action which we and our French allies took together.